totally makes sense. Let's jump straight into it then, and I want to go into, the first question. How did you start snowboarding, and like when and where was this available to you?
So I've been skiing since I was about 3. And then my parents were both big skiers. And they were also members of like a canoeing club or whitewater rafting club. And the club had like a little hut up in the Czech mountains. So like since I was about 8 and 9, we would every second weekend, we would go up in the mountains, up in the hut and ski. And then when I was 10, that was in 1993, snowboarding just became known in the Czech Republic. And a lot of my parents' friends started snowboarding. And I was 10 and I was like, oh my God, Mom, Dad, this is so cool. Like, I want to try it. So first time I tried snowboarding was just outside of this hut.
Ooh.
So imagine like a slope that is completely not groomed, like nothing, just fresh snow. And also because I was 10 and all the other friends were around like 25 or in their mid-20s. So the only thing I could do is take my ski boots and then strap my ski boots into like a race board or a hard board. So imagine a 10-year-old kid trying to stand up on a hardboard in like a completely ungroomed area. It was like, I think I just spent most of the time in the snow. But somehow, I don't know how I fell in love with it. And I was like, Mom, Dad, like, this is so cool. Like, I want to snowboard. And my parents were like, well, you have to learn first. Like, we're not going to just buy you your own snowboard and then you realize you don't like it. So I had to learn by myself. And 1993, like, that was really fresh. There was no lessons, no nothing. Nobody in the Czech Republic really knew how to do it. They all just tried somehow. I remember having this book. It was called Snowboarding from A to Z. That I read, but didn't understand really, and it didn't say anything about like how you turn and stuff like that. But then I remember we went for like a spring break holiday or something. We went to Černá Hora, which is one of the mountains and ski resorts in the Czech Republic, and up. We stayed on a hotel right on the top of the mountain, and there was like a pretty nice and mellow, flattish piste. So finally there I was able to. One of my parents' friends, who was really small about my size, she lent me her snowboard, which was finally a soft snowboard. So I got to try a soft snowboard on a mellow slope, and finally I managed to kind of like stand up and do a bit of a falling leaf or try some turns, and I absolutely fell in love with it. I said that I would never ever ski again, that it's so boring. And I forced my parents to buy me a snowboard. So I got my first snowboard for my 11th birthday. And because I was only 11, they didn't have the boots my size. So my first snowboard boots were actually just snowshoes that somehow my parents fitted the liners, the inside of a ski boot. They somehow managed to like pierce it and put shoelaces into it. And then they put the inside of the ski boot into a snowshoe, and that was my first snowboard boots.
How soft was it? How was it? Just like you folded in?
Well, because there was the insole or the inside of the ski boot, it was actually pretty stiff. Yeah. So it could hold, like, obviously not as stiff as a ski boot, but like similar to a snowboard boot.
The liner kept it like fairly stiff than you would think.
Yeah.
And can you remember like the first jarring change from a hard boot to a soft boot? Because usually it's the other way around nowadays in terms of people going from soft boot and then they kind of transition to hard boot. Do you still remember that feeling from that switch?
Yeah, like I would remember it was so much more comfortable.
Yeah.
Like I was really struggling, and I don't think I was able to turn in the hard boot because like there's so much balance you have to get, and the tilting, and at that time like you're not skilled enough to be able to do that, so it was so much easier when I got the soft boots.
Was your when you did the hard boots, did you start on like full on positive stance, if you remember, or was it a bit different?
I don't really remember. The only thing I remember, I had no idea about like goofy regular. So then when I got my first snowboard, I remember, and my parents knew nothing about snowboarding, so they just somehow like mounted my bindings regular, and then since then I'm regular. But I think like all the tests and stuff you do, I think I would actually be goofy, but because I learned like regular, I ride regular.
Yeah, that, you know what, that's the same with me. I ride regular, but I genuinely should be goofy in terms of the other sports I do. And it's so jarring. And you look back at it now and you know the difference between the two. And you're like, why have I rode this way? Why shouldn't I start riding this way? It jars you off a bit. It's because it's like when I go for like, if I wanted to go for a front flip, for example, on a snowboard or a tame dog, I would actually genuinely want to push on my right foot and do it that way. Instead, it feels more comfortable than on my left. So that's how I kind of started to realize, you know what, I've been learning the wrong way this entire time and I didn't know it. It's great. Oh, though you've got a really good switch at the end. But
yeah, well, that's the thing. But the funny thing is that like riding switch still feels like, of course I'm an instructor, so I can ride switch, but it still feels a little bit unnatural because I learned regular.
That's great. And how were those first lessons when you started to get to feeling the turn on the snowboard and everything kind of going underneath?
Yeah, well, there were no lessons at that time. Like there were no instructors. They actually started the first instructing courses started in 1994. So before that, there was like no lessons, nothing. So I was 100% self-taught. And yeah, and it took me actually several years to really, really get it. And I remember my parents really suffering with me because we would go every second weekend. We would go up to the hut, but then once a season, we would always go on a big trip to like Austria, Italy, or France. And my whole family, they were all skiers. My sister was a skier. All my other friends were skiers. I was the only snowboarder there, and I was like 10, 11. So I was tiny, and I remember wherever we were going and they were flat parts, like my parents had to drag me on a pole, like, and they always had to wait for me on the top of the run until I like strapped myself in, and they were a bit annoyed. So at one point, they got me step-in bindings. So I was on step-in bindings for a couple of seasons.
That's cool. What brand were they? Was they K2 or were they
Liquid or Liquid Dough, something like that.
Oh, that is
Liquid Dough might be the band. So
I've never heard of that brand.
Did you feel quite out of place on a snowboard when you did go to these other countries, like especially in France? And I'm guessing there was like so many more skiers, and because you were so young, you didn't really care.
I don't remember noticing many snowboarders around, or like I think I didn't care much. Like what I cared about was trying to catch up with my family or keep up with my family. So that was the important thing for me. Yeah.
And how many more trips did you kind of go on before you really started to kind of think you wanted to do instructing as a career? Like, just talk to me that long-winded as long as you can with where you went before you started to really think about instructing?
Well, it actually got to the point when I was about 20. And I was about to start university, and I would, up until then, every second weekend I would go with my parents on that hut and ski, because we also had there was like a little ski lift. There was a private ski lift, so we could even go and ski after hours, and it was really, really cool. And then when I was about 20, I was like, well, I'm 20 now. I think I should stop spending weekends with my parents. And I should probably like find my own group of friends that I could go and ski or snowboard with. But I didn't know how. And I was like, oh, but because up until then, like my parents paid all the expenses for me, obviously. So I was like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? So I don't spend much money on like, how can I still continue snowboarding on a budget? And then I was like, oh, okay, like I've been doing this long enough. So maybe I can try and become an instructor. But I had no idea like how to do it. So I remember I just Googled some ski schools, and I sent them an email and I said, hey, because by that time I was already snowboarding for 10 years. So I was like, hey, I've been snowboarding for 10 years. Like, I don't have any qualifications, but I have a big passion for the sport. And what do I have to do to become an instructor? And then one of the ski schools replied, and they said, hey, you have to do an instructing course. And the course was exactly of my like first examination time at uni. So because I was in the first year of uni, I didn't know how that works. And I was like, oh, maybe I can't afford to do this course because it's really during the examination time. So I was like, okay, well, whatever, I'll skip it, but I'll know next year. And next year I'll do the exam, and then I'll start instructing from the following year. So I completely forgot about it. And then I think it was sometime in like January or beginning of February, I got an email from the ski school saying like, hey, you've contacted us about wanting to become an instructor. Are you still interested? And I was like, yes, I am definitely still interested. But I don't have any qualifications. And they're like, oh, it doesn't matter. Like, we'll train you. We'll give you all the necessary training. Just come into our ski resorts and we'll explain everything. So one weekend I said, okay, yes, I'll go and do it. So I went to Strážné, which is another resort in the Czech mountains. And I went into the ski school office and I said, hey, I'm Kate. I want to be an instructor. And I got this email and they said, hey, well, the manager's not here today, but here's a ski pass and go and explore the resort. And when the manager comes in, we'll give you a call and you'll go together and he'll have a look how you ride and if you have got the ability to become an instructor. So I got the ski pass, rode all day, came at the end of the day because nobody called me and they said, oh, the manager didn't make it, like he'll be here tomorrow morning. So just come tomorrow 9 o'clock to the office. So I was completely lost. Like I knew nobody. They gave me a key to the accommodation. So I spent the night there. And then in the morning I came to the office and they were like, oh, the manager's still not here, but here's a snowboard instructing manual. Just read it. And he'll be here in like half an hour. So I was sitting there in the office, reading the manual, not understanding a word of it. Like I had no idea what they talk about. And then 2 Dutch guys came into the office wanting a snowboard lesson. And from what I understood, the secretary there, she said, well, but unfortunately, we only have one snowboard instructor available right now. And they were like, no, but like we're separate, we're different abilities. Like we can't have a same instructor. We need to have different instructors. And she was trying to explain to them she only has one available. And then somebody said, I had no idea who was that, but they said, oh, Kate here can teach it. And I was like, what? I've never taught before. I had absolutely no training. I had no uniform. I'm there. And I knew the resort somehow because I was skiing I was snowboarding the day before. And then it was like, I can't do it. And they're like, you can't speak English, can you? And I was like, well, yeah, because I've been learning English since first grade. So I was like, well, I can, but I've never taught, I've never instructed. Like, I don't know what to tell them. And they're like, hey, he's already a little experienced rider. Like he can ride at the slopes. So he'll probably just have a weight on his back leg. So just tell him to put his weight on his front leg and he'll be fine. They gave me uniform and that's how I taught my first lesson.
How did you feel like those I'm not first lesson, just going a bit more detail. What was going in your head? Like, how did you, were you just like completely nerve wracking? Did you tell the customer that you were just like,
no way,
or was it just like kind of like winging it and being like, oh yeah, I know my shit kind of style?
I think at that time for me, the bigger concern was my English, that I was teaching in English. So we were basically just riding up the mountain for 2 hours, and I was trying to give him some pointers and like some tips. I had no idea. But I was just like, oh, just wing it. Then they were really happy with me. And then the ski school manager came and he was so proud that he managed to sell those 2 like extra hours. And I was like, are you going to come with me now and like watch me ride or something like that? And he's like, no, you're fine. You already taught your first lesson. Like, here's your uniform, keep your uniform. Here's your season pass. And like, when can you come? And that's how I started instructing.
That's so cool. Kind of go from the ski lessons itself, how many more lessons did you do just as like standard with the ski school before you gained your qualification in instructing?
So I taught a whole season, because I started probably it was beginning of February, so I did like another 2 months. I was still at uni, so I would only go there for the weekends and then teach during the weekends, and during the week I would be at uni. And then I knew for sure that like at the start of the next season, I really want to do my qualification. So that was December 2004. I did my level C.
Level C. So
level C, yes. So
yeah,
the Czech system. Yeah, so the Czech system is very unique compared to all the other associations around the world, because we don't have level 1, 2, 3, 4, but we have levels D, C, B, A, which D is the lowest one and A is the highest one. But in my time, like in the 90s, there was no D. There was only the course C, which was like a week or a 10-day course. And it would basically cover what would compare to, in the other associations, it would compare to level 2, because it was so much longer, and all the techniques that we went through would be up to like level 2. So then recently, a few years ago, because they started noticing that the Czech system is really, really weird and it's really difficult to compare it to the other associations. And then we as instructors, when we started traveling abroad and getting jobs abroad, like it was really hard to kind of relate, like see what it is like. Also, the important thing was that like we could, when you get your B qualification, and you do a couple of extra courses, that's when you can get ISIA stamp. So that's why also, like, I got my B license 3 years, 2004, 2009, so 5 years after 2007, so three years. After 3 years, I got my level B, which basically compared to a level 3 in the other association. So I kind of skipped the level 1. And then recently, because they've noticed that the Czech Association is really weird, they split the course C and made it 2 shorter courses, course D and C. So it still remains DCBA, like we still call it letters, but now the D relates to the level 1, C to level 2, B level 3, and A is level 4.
That makes sense, because it's sort of similar to GCSEs in England, where you have A being the highest score, B being second, and as you go down sort of the letters, you go down sort of the level.
And it does relate, the levels do relate to every other European association, because from the previous podcasts we've been speaking to, most of them just started off with like what a level 2 is now, as they didn't have their level 1, and then of course
it's like a pre-instructor course in such of a way. Like D would
so it's like an introduction to instructing. So you can you can teach beginners. You can basically teach beginners, or be like an assistant to a more experienced instructor.
Is that sort of the same, like when if you're just a D instructor, you can only teach people, as you said, beginners, or learning how to get them to do turns, as well as should be teaching them more in a controlled environment. And then when you get onto a level C, still trying to keep saying, feel like we keep saying level 2, level C, it'd be more all mountain, a little bit more advanced riding, so and so, and then B would be more advanced.
Yeah. So the and they still do it as, like, you can sign up. They still do the level D and C consequently. So you can sign up either for just the D part, which is probably like 4 days, or you can sign up for the full like 7 or 8 day course and do a D and C all together.
That's really cool.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and kind of going from that, do you guys have the ISIA stamp for your level? Your level, sorry, B.
Level B.
B. Yeah. Is that an optional thing, or does that integrate with the level B itself?
No, so it's an optional thing. You have to apply for that, and you also the level B is not enough. You also, like, when I wanted to apply for my ISIA stamp, I had to do an avalanche course and a free ride course. Now they shifted a little bit, and you have to do an avalanche course and you have to do a snowboard cross course. So you have to do your second discipline.
Yes, which would be either skiing, adaptive, whatever, sort of a snow sport.
Yeah. Would you guys need to do a second languages as well, or is that not required for you guys?
Yes. So you have to do, so in the level B, you do a second language. And then in the level A, I'm not 100% sure about the snowboarding part, but with the ski part, you have to do 2 languages. So yeah. So you do your teach in your second language, and then there's a part of analysis that you do in your third lange, and you have to pass, and it's like a separate component that you have to pass your third language as well when you're doing your A. Because very few people in the world speak Czech, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's mad. And for the level A, do you get your ISAA card afterwards as well?
Yes. Yeah, you do get your ISI card, but that includes like you have to do your in skiing it's a speed test. In snowboarding you have to get your FIS points in the snowboard cross.
Which makes sense. And I'm guessing most people would just go straight to border cross because they had to do it with their level B as it is anyway. So it's just kind of that easy route going in.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
For the level A, there's a snowboard cross 2 course as well.
Oh wow! No
where
way.
you have to get your FIS points.
You know what does that consist of? Because there's not a lot of associations that have like an instructor snowboard cross. Really, we don't in Basie. I've never heard it in any other ones. Really?
No, we have a border cross for ours.
Yeah, true.
So for Basie, when people do their level 4 and they want to get their FIS points, I think then it's obviously ours would be border cross. I'm pretty sure there's another one, or like I think you can get FIS points if you already compete in say another style of snowboarding.
If you've already competed, like if you're if you are a professional snowboarder, then you've got your points.
So
you don't need to do it.
Can I ask in terms of the difference between the level 1 border cross to the level 2?
Yeah.
To be honest, I don't know.
You go faster.
Because so I did my level B course in 2007. And at that time, actually, it was the highest possible qualification for snowboarding. So in the ski part, the qualifications went up to level A. But in the snowboard section of the association, there was nobody who was as good that could teach it, and there was also like no written or no methodology for the A course. So at that time, the B was the highest possible course. And then I actually, because that's another story, because when I started instructing, I wouldn't ski for 10 years. I literally haven't skied for 10 years. And when I started instructing, they were always short of ski instructors. So they asked me, can you ski? And I was like, well, I haven't skied for 10 years, but I used to as a kid and I was pretty good at it. And they're like, doesn't matter. You don't forget it. It's like swimming. Here's a pair of skis. Here's a kid's ski gym. So I simultaneously, I started teaching skiing, but basically just kids and like skiing backwards, holding their ski tips together, saying like, make a pizza, make a pizza, make a pizza. But and then the carving revolution came in the Czech Republic. So as I was instructing, I got the opportunity to try the carving skis, and I stepped on them, and I felt like the similar sensation when you tip the skis on the edge. I felt a similar sensation like I did when I was snowboarding, and I was like, oh, that's kind of fun. Like, I don't remember it being this fun 10 years ago. So I kind of started going back to skiing. And then because I had nowhere else, like nowhere higher to go with my snowboarding qualifications, in 2009, I thought that I would make it official. And I did my, at that time, level C ski qualification. And then since then, I started working on my skiing more and more, because then when I started traveling, I would try to get jobs as a snowboard instructor, but I was so much more employable as a ski instructor or a dual instructor, with my first discipline being skiing. So it kind of like naturally for me shifted back to skiing. And then I've been basically focusing on my skiing since then, trying to work on my level A skiing. because I'm not a park person. And when I did my level B, I was 23. So I was fearless. I was hitting the jumps. I was hitting the rails. Like I could do freestyle. But after I turned 30, I started being so much more conscious, and parks doesn't really bring me that much joy. I love riding. I love powder. I love carving. But park's not my thing. And with the level A in snowboarding, freestyle is a huge part. And of course, the requirements for passing, even now, like passing your level B, is higher. Like the standards are much higher than they were in 2007. So I've actually never got to the point where I would have to do the snowboard cross or yeah. So I don't know what are the snowboard courses about. Sorry.
Makes sense. I mean, even though it's just a snowboard instructor podcast, I do want you to go a bit more into the kind of ski related in terms of their system. I'm guessing it's pretty similar in terms of the levels and what's required from the snowboarding as well. More of going into the modules of it. So really, I'm guessing you guys in the Czech have an adaptive module. I'm guessing you guys have like a freestyle module as well. Is that correct?
We don't have an adaptive module. They've only recently started doing some adaptive courses. But like, for example, adaptive in the Czech Republic isn't considered as a second discipline. Like it's either ski or snowboard, or cross country skiing. Yeah.
And you just have
or telemark.
Telemark, yeah, the different levels, different disciplines of skiing.
Yeah. But they don't consider adaptive as a second discipline because it's not yet as much developed in the Czech Republic.
That's super interesting because everywhere else there is like specific qualifications for teaching an adaptive. I'm sure you guys have short courses on anything like that, or that aren't like a proper qualification, but just kind of like a little course,
like a general idea.
Yeah. I noticed they've started doing those courses last year, or I know there was an attempt to open an adaptive course last year, but like thanks to COVID and stuff, I'm not even sure if they managed to find enough participants and run that course actually. So yeah, there's not much adaptive in the Czech Republic as I know of, because we'll probably get into that later. I haven't been teaching the past 10 years. I haven't been teaching in the Czech Republic. So I did my studying. I did my research. What's the system now and where it's developed? And
yeah, I'm more than happy for you to kind of really talk about, what you had to deal with in your kind of qualifications and how it all works. So kind of let's go into detail a bit more on the snowboarding side specifically, on any specific methods, any specific analogies that you guys use, and what you kind of grew up with in terms of when learning all this stuff. So I'm guessing because and we'll go on to the overall seasons that you've done round the world, around the globe, but specifically for the Czech system, can you just kind of quickly go through the specific method you guys use to help, like a framework, of course, you guys use to help with your instructor qualifications and kind of going forward from that?
Yeah, so like remembering my level C course ages ago, I remember it was really challenging for me because at that time I was already snowboarding for 10 years and I thought I was a really good snowboarder because I managed to develop like a really stable upper body. And it was only when my legs that would like work underneath me and do all the work. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so cool. Like my upper body is like so still and I just do this and it's so cool. and then I went into my into the qualification, and I was really struggling because and there were guys who would be snowboarding for 2 or 3 years, and they did so much better than me because they didn't have as many bad habits as I did. So I had to, and because I was never really taught, I never had lessons myself. So after those 10 years, my instructing course was actually my first lesson. And the thing that I remember the most was that they actually told me you have to start turning with your upper body, actually with your shoulders. So that was all those years ago. The methodology, how you would teach how to start to turn, would be to do like a shooting gun or like an arrow with one of your hands, then stick your other hand on your belly, and then you would actually show with your hand where you want to go, and then according to that you would turn your shoulders, you turn your hips, your knees, and then your legs, and then the snowboard would turn.
That seems very like surfer-like. So when I did surfing, that's the exact same method they taught me how to surf, is use your body, use your shoulders. And obviously, I've coming from a snowboard instructor background, I'm like, I don't want to do this. I'm opening too much on my body. This is weird. So that's actually pretty cool, seeing a different way on how they would teach you. Do they still teach that method now? Or has that obviously changed massively?
No, yes. It has changed. And I was actually really surprised to realize that it hasn't changed as much, because like doing my seasons abroad, like training in the Canadian system or in the New Zealand system, they so much more start from the lower body. They start from the down up. So they start with like foot pedaling, or they start with knee steering and stuff like that. So I would think that the Czech system would also like change and because to me it makes sense that it's so much better to start from the bottom up. The board reacts so much quicker when you give them impulses with your feet than like starting with your shoulders, and then it takes so much time till it goes down and the board actually turns. So when I did my research, knowing I was going on this podcast and you guys would ask how it works now.
You know it, Kat.
So now what they teach is they work with the center of gravity. So you're thinking about your center of gravity, and you're tipping or tilting your center of gravity inside of the turn. And then what they say to think, you start from your head. So you look where you want to go, and then you turn your shoulders, turn your hips, turn your pelvis, turn your legs, turn your ankles and your feet, and then the board goes. So I was actually really surprised. It works like this now. This is what they teach now.
Yes, finally. No, it's so good to see. And it's super interesting in that way. Did you want to say anything else quickly?
Yeah, I was just going on with that. Yeah, it is super interesting because you do see the progression throughout not just the Czech system, through quite a lot of other systems that have started with, a very surfer-like mentality, using your shoulders and that jazz.
Of course, because snowboarding was developed from surfing. Surfing was there first.
Yeah. Surfing and skateboarding, those are the guys that ended up doing snowboarding. And you can see why they use their shoulders, because it works in that specific sport. So transferring it over works, a little bit better.
Yeah, makes sense. And going from, before we kind of move into anything else, I just want to talk about just the Czech and the ski industry and the snowboard industry in the Czech Republic, and how you guys work as a community and a society. And like you did say previously before, we start recording, about pretty much like 90% of you ski and snowboard. Can we just go into a bit more detail on that, please?
Yes. So not many people know that, but Czech Republic has a really big snow sports industry. So I think 90% of the nation ski or snowboard, or they do cross country. There's so many like trails around the Czech mountains, like cross country trails. We do have a lot of ski resorts around the Czech Republic. And we do get quite a lot of foreign skiers or foreign people that want to learn how to ski. So that's another thing, because in the Czech Republic, nearly everybody ski or snowboard. So all the parents ski or snowboard, and they think they know it best. So they would teach their children. So when I started instructing, the majority of my clients were foreign. They were either German, Dutch, or English, because we do have a lot of ski resorts. The mountains are not as big as the Alps, for example. The services are not as good, but we're also pretty cheap. So if somebody wants to go on a budget ski holiday, Czech Republic is the destination. So that's one typical thing. Another typical thing for Czech Republic, what I find, what I really enjoyed when I started teaching abroad, is most of the instructors, I'm not 100% sure nowadays, but 10 years ago, before I left Czech Republic, most of the instructors were students, and they would only instruct part-time. So there were very few instructors that were full-time. But a lot of the schools, they would have like a big local community. So the people that would live locally, they would come, like they would kind of be on call. So when there was a big demand for lessons, they would pick up a phone and say, "Hey, can you come? We've got those lessons." Or somebody like me, that I would say, "Okay, I can come over the weekends, and then maybe this is my university schedule, so maybe I could do like Saturday to Tuesday, and then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I'd have to go back to school." So not a lot of people are really like full-time professional instructors. A lot of people do it just for fun, like me initially, just because they want to ski for free. So there's a lot of instructors that come, and they actually don't want lessons. They don't want to teach. They just want the free pass, and they want to ride around the resort and not really teach. So that's a bit challenging in kind of managing the business levels with how many instructors you have, and it was really like fluctuating. And what I really enjoyed when I started teaching abroad is that the community is so much more like, there's people that are professional instructors. It's their life. They absolutely love it, and they're not just there to enjoy themselves and then, let's say, like party and get an absolutely smashed party to like 4:00 in the mountain, then sleep for 2 hours, and then go and teach a lesson absolutely hammered, which when I was instructing 10 years ago, that would happen quite frequently. So
that's good. Yeah, I definitely want to go Czech Republic now.
Yeah.
Sounds like a fun time. But let's move.
Yeah, there's like so many nightclubs, and the beer is super cheap. Like in the Czech Republic, I don't know if you've ever heard that, but beer in the Czech Republic, beer is cheaper than water.
I don't even know if it was cheaper than water. That's great. How much for, like, let's say a pint or whatever?
If you come to a pub,
yeah,
and you want to buy like 0.3 liters of water, like a bottle of water,
okay,
it's about the same price as a pint of beer. Exactly.
Definitely.
Oh, so good.
That seems like really, really cool to like talk about. And I think when you go anywhere other than sort of France or Austria or sort of Switzerland, so for like for example, Andorra's, because it's tax free, everything's cheap over there. It's like €2 a pint. I don't know if it's cheaper in the Czech Republic. I'm not sure. Probably
€2. How much is a euro right now? No, that's more expensive.
Would that be more expensive? So,
I'd say €1.50, probably. Yeah, €1.50 to €2 would be a pint.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay.
Woody, with like £4, £5 a pint here. Jesus Christ.
Oh dear me. So talking about you've just done your level C and that jazz, and then you ended up going through the system with the Czech system. What point did you go, fuck it, I want to go off and start seeing the other worlds and places? Go into that a bit more, because that sort of, I'm interested about that. And also the other question is, I want to say, what did you do in uni? Because as soon as you mentioned uni course, I was just like, what course did you do?
Uni thing first,
so I started studying theater history, and then I went into theater management. So I actually studied at the Czech Academy of Music and Performing Arts, which is like a university for actors, directors, screenplay writers. But I did the management part of it. So I did my bachelor in that, and then my master's was in like a performing arts management, or kind of more focused in the arts management. And that kind of relates to your first question, because when I finished uni, or when I was in my last year of uni, I was working for a non-profit organization called Pro Art. And we were organizing some like regular dance courses, like modern dance. We were also organizing an international multicultural festival of dance, singing, acting, and photography. And I was kind of struggling, because I loved it. Like, I loved performing arts. I had huge passion for it. But on the other hand, I knew that it's going to be really, really, really difficult to make my living. And I had this huge dilemma, and I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do when I finish uni. Like, I don't know if I want to do it and like be really, really, really poor, but do something very honorable and like, and support the arts and the cultural life in the Czech Republic. Or I want to do in like the commercial part of things, like organize maybe some events or weddings or stuff like that. So I didn't know. And because I actually ended up studying university for 8 years.
Wow, 8 years?
8 years, yes. Yeah, so I've got 2 bachelor degrees and a master degree.
Sorry, continue.
I also like went and worked abroad. I went to Canada for 6 months during my university studies, and so it just took me to finish my final master degree. It took me 8 years, and I was absolutely like sick of studying, and I want to do something absolutely crazy and kind of like clear my head and find out what I actually want to do in my life. So me and my 2 friends, who are also instructors, who I met up in the Czech mountains, we bought a van, a Volkswagen Transporter T3 from 1982, and we drove it from the Czech Republic to India. Yes. It took us 6 months. And after those 6 months, when we were in India, the van broke and like it was completely irreparable. So we just sold it for parts. And for the money we got, we bought flight tickets to New Zealand. And I was kind of leaving this whole journey after like, all right, let's go to New Zealand. We're going to do some fruit picking or something like that. I'm going to save some money. And then I'll go after the year in New Zealand because I had my working holiday visa. So I was like, after the year in New Zealand, I'll go back to Czech Republic. I'll reconstruct my flat that I had back in the Czech Republic. I inherited from my great grandmother. And I was like, I'm going to settle down and I'm going to start the regular life. Like, I don't think I can make a living in the arts, so I'll probably start with a wedding planning or something like that. So then we came to New Zealand and we timed it wrong because we didn't know how long the whole journey is going to take us. So we came to New Zealand in April, or kind of end of April, May, which the ski season in New Zealand starts in June. So obviously, like, end of summer or kind of going into fall, all the like, there was no fruit to pick anymore. And I was like, oh my God, I have no idea what I'm going to do. Like, I don't want to go to a factory and start packing some things. And I was like, like, it's coming into winter. Maybe I can get a job in a ski resort, because I was instructing for 8 seasons back in Czech Republic while I was at uni. So I did have some background, and I was like, I'm not sure if they're going to recognize my Czech qualifications. So at that time, I had my level B snowboard and my level C ski. So I was like, I'm dual qualified. I speak pretty good English. I'll give it a go. So I applied for like several ski schools all over New Zealand. And I got a job offer to be a lifty at Coronet Peak, which is just above Queenstown, or I had an offer to be a ski instructor at Porter's, which is a pretty small ski resort about an hour and a half from Christchurch. So I had those two options, like to be a lifty in Queenstown, which is a really, really buzzing town, really expensive town to live as well. Or I had the opportunity to go and teach at Porter's, live kind of in the middle of the nowhere, but be an instructor. And because obviously after the 6 months of traveling, I was completely broke. I had barely any money. I was like, I have no idea, like, how am I going to survive the first few weeks in Queenstown? So I accepted the job at Porter's. As well, I was like, I did 8 seasons of instructing. After 8 seasons of instructing, I don't want to be just a lifty. So I did my first season abroad, which was absolutely amazing, or in a way amazing. I did not manage to save any money, but I absolutely loved it. Realized that this is the thing that makes me the most happy, that I absolutely love being in the snow, love teaching people, love seeing them improve, overcome their fears, and kind of in a way like change their lives. If I'm exaggerating a bit, or maybe not.
No, I wouldn't say exaggerate. That's definitely not exaggerating, because you start snowboarding, you can relate it to yourself. It changed your life. So getting someone to snowboard and teaching them, for them to go, oh my God, I love this sport, I want to do my whole life around it. Yeah, that is a definitely life-changing sort of sport.
Yeah. I'll make a little detour, because I have one story that I always say, that being an instructor changes people's lives. And that was back in New Zealand. After several seasons, I actually went back. But my home mountain right now is the Remarkables in Queenstown. So I was teaching an Aussie family there, and it was because what they do is they have like a family package where a family can sign up for that lesson no matter what level they are. And they get like a full day, 7-hour lesson, kind of including lunch, with their instructor. When you like help them from the start, you help to get them equipment, and then you have them for the whole day. and you just kind of work with them however long or however long they last throughout the day. So I was teaching this one family. It was a mom and a dad and 2 teenage sons. And the mom used to live in Switzerland. So I think she lived in Switzerland for like 5 years. So obviously she skied there and she absolutely loved it. But her husband and the boys, they've skied once and absolutely hated it. So they never wanted to go for ski holidays. And they would always, like every year, they would always go just for the beach holiday. And the mom was getting a bit upset because she was like, I love mountains. I love skiing. Like, I want to go there, but my family doesn't. So she somehow managed to persuade them to go on this holiday to Queenstown. And they booked this 1 day, full day lesson with me. And at the end of that 1 day, I managed to get the dad and the 2 boys turning, and somehow the boys absolutely fell in love with it. They booked a few more lessons, and at the end of it they were like, mom, like, can we come again tomorrow? Can we come again tomorrow? And can we come next year? And stuff like that. So, and the mom was thanking me absolutely, and she was like, Kate, you changed my life. Like, from now on, the boys are absolutely passionate about skiing, and I'm so happy that we can finally start going for ski holidays as a family. So that's how I say we as instructors, we change lives.
We do. And how many more seasons did you do in New Zealand before kind of really venturing out? Was it that, like you said, was it that one season to start off with, and then you kind of really started to explore everywhere else and then come back to New Zealand? Did you do a couple more?
Yes. So I did that one season at Porter's, absolutely loved it, but didn't manage to save any money. So I was like, if I wanted to go back to Czech Republic now, I wouldn't even have money for my flight ticket back home. And because I had like a year-long visa, I stayed in New Zealand for the summer, worked in a cafe in Wanaka on the lakefront. Again, absolutely loved it and wanted to stay in New Zealand for another winter. So I contacted Porter's and I said, hey, I taught for you last season and I would love to go back. Can you sponsor me? Because being from the Czech Republic, you can only get the working holiday visa to New Zealand once in a lifetime for 1 year. Like, it's, yeah. So it's not extendable, nothing. So the only way for me to do another season in New Zealand was to get sponsored. But at that time, I was dual qualified, but I didn't have my ISIA stamp because I didn't have my freestyle or my free ride and my avalanche course. So they were like, we're really sorry. We could employ you while you were on a working holiday visa, but because your license is not internationally recognized, we cannot sponsor you for the next season. So I was like, okay. I'm only missing an avalanche course and a free ride course to get my ISIA. So I'll go back to Czech Republic. I'll do those 2 modules, get my ISIA, and then try and apply for the visa again. So I did that, got back to the ski school at Porter's and said, hey, I got my ISIA. Can you sponsor me now? But by that time, it was already like, again, end of April, beginning of May. So they said, we're really sorry. We've hired all our instructors and all the visas are already in process. Feel free to try next year. And I was like, oh no, my God. Like, next year is a long time. What I'm going to do until then. And I was like, I don't really want to stay in the Czech Republic. I want to try and make my living as an instructor. So I applied for a working holiday visa to Canada, got my working holiday visa to Canada, which was kind of a process. So I only left to Canada like midsummer, so sometime probably in August. So I flew into Calgary, found a job in one of the little cafes in Canmore, just outside of Banff. Thinking, okay, now I'm close to the mountains. There's a few ski resorts around here. Like if I settle down here, I can definitely try and find a job for the winter. So I did that when the winter season came. I applied for several ski resorts. One of them was Sunshine Village.
Yeah.
And I think I applied for like Kimberley, and even for like some of the resorts, and Kicking Horse, not Whistler, but Revelstoke was kind of my dream mountain where I wanted to go and teach. But it was like
Why?
Revelstoke.
Yeah, but
why? Because
Yeah.
of the powder.
It's the powder. Is it just full on?
Pretty
Yeah.
much just full
Yes.
on. Yeah. It's like
Yeah. Revy, like that's where I wanted to go. But there was the terrain. Yeah. But there was no way. I did manage to get a job offer from Kicking Horse, which is like a smaller mountain, not too far from Revy. But when I did my interview, I asked the guy, I was like, how much work do you think I'll get? And he was like, you've been instructing for long enough, you know how the business level work. And I'll always tell my instructors, like, come with a couple of $1,000 in your pocket, so you can always go for a beer after work. Or if you don't have those couple $1,000 extra dollars, you'd probably have to find another job in town, like washing dishes or bartending or something like that. And I didn't really want to do that. And then I applied for Sunshine Village, and I did my interview with Sunshine Village, which would be ideal because living in Canmore, I was already pretty settled there since summer. I had my friends around, so I didn't really want to leave that area. But when I did my interview with Sunshine, I didn't get accepted. And I was like, even though I already had friends and they said they would put a good word for me in, and I was pretty certain with 10 years of experience, being dual qualified, a level 3 snowboard instructor, level 2 ski instructor, I was pretty confident I can get the job. And I got like just the usual email that they send everyone, like, sorry, we've had so many applicants, and you weren't one of them. But because I had friends working at Sunshine, they told me, no, like, call Colleen Collison. She's in charge of the hiring, and she'll actually tell you the right reason. So I called her, and she said, because I applied for a snowboard instructor position, because I was obviously higher qualified for snowboarding. And she was like, well, I know you said you also had ski qualifications, but we already have like enough snowboard instructors. And in our interview, I thought you said you don't want to teach skiing. And I said, like, no, I didn't say I don't want to teach skiing. I only said I only brought my snowboard with me because when I was going to Canada, I was already planning on instructing, so I brought my snowboard with me. And I was like, I only said I don't have my skis, but I'm more than happy to teach skiing. And she said, well, all right then, like, if you're happy to teach skiing, I'd be happy to offer you a part-time ski instructing position. Because she was like, I already have all my full-time instructors hired, so you can do part-time. So I had a choice between Kicking Horse, where I would have to go and like find my accommodation again and start like the settling down process again and again, or stay in Canmore, where I had a house with amazing housemates, and I had my other job. So I went to my boss in the cafe that I was working, and I asked her if she would be all right for me if I would go up the mountains and teach on the weekends. And she said, well, weekends are busy for us, but I also need people to work during the week. So like, I'll be more than happy to have you 3 days a week. So I actually ended up working 3 days a week in the cafe, then working weekends at Sunshine. And then I remember I had Mondays and Tuesdays off. So I would do a level 4 snowboard training on Mondays, and then level 3 ski training on Tuesdays. And that was like the biggest advantage that teaching at Sunshine gave me, because I was only a part-time instructor, I was all the way at the bottom of the priority. Like, even though I've instructed for 10 years, I've been instructing for 10 years, I was a level 3 snowboard instructor, level 2 ski instructor, I'd be at the bottom of priority. So only when they were like super, super, super busy days, I would teach. All the other days I would just ski or ride around, whatever day it was. And then at least, because I was an employee of the ski school, I could take the advantage of the trainings. So I would do my training. So I would basically spend 4 days on the snow and then 3 days working in the cafe.
Oh, makes sense. I mean, how was the training courses when you at the resort itself? Were they really interesting? Did you really enjoy it? Were they quite inspiring?
I loved it. I absolutely loved it, because like in the Czech Republic, in the ski schools, also because of the nature how the ski school works, what we talked about previously, that a lot of the instructors there are only part-time and they go there and only want to have fun. So there's barely any trainings. Like, if they do, some of the big ski schools, they do trainings maybe once, twice a week over the weekend at like a night ski, but they don't do trainings. And when I worked at Porter's, that was also like a very small ski school, there was only 15 instructors. And most of the time, like, there was not enough of us. Most of the instructors would be teaching. There was not enough of us for training, or no one who could train us. So Sunshine for me was the first ski school, like a really, really big ski school with over 100 instructors, where every morning, like, we would line up at 9, but the first lessons would start at 10, 10:15. So the first hour, we would go and do clinics every morning. And then after the first lineup at 9, they would either, people, if they were hungover, they would go back to the staff cafe and have a coffee and sleep there. Or like us who were really keen doing training, they would always be like 8 or 10 of us that would go and do the morning training. So that's what I really took advantage of. And I found so many friends, and we would go and ski or snowboard together, like whatever I was on for the moment. And then there was the full day CERT trainings, which was like the most like structured training that I had before that. And I absolutely loved it. I thought it was awesome. And it really, really set the tone for me, like really wanting to improve. And because I was like, technically I was a level 3 snowboard instructor, I would go and do my level 4 training, which there weren't many people that would do level 4 training. So I remember there was like 2 or 3 of us. So it was basically like full day private training just for myself and 1 or 2 other instructors that would do this training, and that was incredibly beneficial. I loved it.
How did you find learning with the Canadian system? Was that pretty interesting in terms of how different it was from your original Czech kind of system, and what were the similarities and differences behind that?
Yeah. So I came from the Czech system, where we were taught to steer with your shoulders, right? So that was the way how I taught. And then I went to Canada, and my trainer was actually Japanese. Yeah, he was a Canadian full cert and trainer examiner. His name was Kaz. And I remember he was trying to explain to me how to steer with my knees. And he would say, like, imagine you have this gym jar between your knees and you try and open it. And I was like, what? Gym jar? What is that? And it took me a while to understand that he's trying to say gem jar, and like for me to take the knees and trying to open, like steer the knees to open the gem jar. So that was like my biggest takeaway. And I remember we did all those advanced things like moguls and a bit of race training. And I know I started, which was a really breaking thing for me, was to work on my breathing. So because I would get really, really tired. And then we realized that I breathed the wrong way. So that was really life-changing, and that was really crucial for my snowboarding to discover that.
Was there any favorite analogies that you liked? Of course, we talked about the jam jar. Was there any other ones you really enjoyed, that was cemented in your brain?
I don't remember. Like the jam jar and the breathing was the biggest takeaways for me. And then what I absolutely love at Sunshine Village was the delirium dive. Have you ever heard about that?
No, I've not.
No, go for it.
I'm interested about this now.
So there's this one run which is off bounds at Sunshine Village. You can only access it having Avigear. Like you have to have your transceiver, and there's actually a gate, or I don't know now, but at that time there was a gate that would open when it picked up on your transceiver, knowing that it's on. It would only open and let you go through that. And it was like the biggest, the gnarliest, like off-piste run that I've ever done. And I remember standing on the top of the delirium dive and like looking down, and I was like, oh my God, like, holy shit. Like that. I'm like, yes, like that, like the cliffs. And I'm like, am I ever gonna do this? And I did it a couple of times, and it was like a huge achievement. And for me, really experiencing like the first backcountry, but at the same time feeling safe because it was out of bounds, but it was still patrolled and controlled. And there was like a big like ski off or a flat ride off of it, but it was amazing, and I absolutely loved it.
That's so good. And moving on from the Canadianist segment, I'm guessing we'll really want to talk about is the Japan segment now, in that phase in that life, and just start from your idea of going to Japan. Like, where did that first come from to the evidently working around there?
Yeah, so that the idea actually came up again in Canada, because I did the season in Canada, stayed for the rest of the summer, for the rest of the length of my visa, because again, it was a year-long visa that I only could get once in a lifetime. But I made a pact with Sunshine already and said that I'm going to be back for another winter season, that they're going to sponsor me. But my visa expired sometime in August, and the winter season started in November. So I made this plan that I'm going to go and travel around Alaska for 6 weeks, which I did, and again, absolutely loved it. But while I was in Alaska, Sunshine got back to me and said, hey, we're really, really, really sorry, but there was a change in a recent legislation. And previously, we were able to sponsor 8 instructors. And now, due to the legislation change, we're only able to sponsor 2, and you're not one of them. And I learned that sometime in like September, October, which is pretty late to start. And I was already planning on staying in Canada for another 6 months. And I was like, oh my God, what I'm going to do? Like, I have no idea what I'm going to do. And then a lot of my friends in Canada said, they were like, oh, just go to Japan. I was like, Japan? You ski in Japan? And they were like, yes, of course. Like, don't you know Japan's got the best snow in the world? And I was like, seriously? I thought I've just skied the best snow in the world. So I started doing my research, and again, sending out application forms around the Japanese ski schools. And a lot of them got back to me saying, hey, we're really sorry. It's quite late. We've already hired all our instructors. Feel free to apply next June, which is like May, June. That's the time when the Japanese ski schools start hiring instructors. Because then it takes, like, unless you have your working holiday visa, which Czech Republic at that time, we didn't have working holiday visa for Japan. So I had to get sponsored, and to get this sponsored visa, it obviously took several months to process it. So I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I have to go back to Czech. And at that time, I was like, I don't really want to live in the Czech Republic, so I don't really want to go back. What I'm going to do. And then there was this one ski school that got back to me saying, hey, we would love to have you, like, with all your qualifications and experience. We'd love to have you, like, we'll get you your visa, we'll pay for your flights, and we'll get you over here as soon as we can. And this ski school was a Club Med ski school. Have you ever heard about Club Med?
No, I have not. Katka, please explain it to me.
So that's actually when me and Kat Holmes, that we were talking before starting recording, where we met. And Club Med is quite a specific company. It's originally a French company that started doing beach holidays, but like sometime in the 50s.
It's mad.
Yeah. But since then, they've like grown massively, and right now they do have around 80 resorts all over the world, and not just beach resorts, but also like ski resorts, mountain resorts. So Club Med is focusing on like an upscale, all-inclusive holidays. So it's obviously really, really expensive, but when you go there, everything is included. So when you work in a mountain Club Med as an instructor, all the hotel guests have their lessons included in their package, which is a huge advantage, because they don't have to pay for the lesson, so they don't think about it, and they actually go and take the lessons. So that's great. Also, when you're an instructor, you're not just an instructor, you're also kind of like an entertainer. So you have to, you can have your breakfast by yourself, but then you go, you get ready for your lesson, you learn what you're teaching the day before. And then you go, you teach it's usually a 2-hour or 1 hour and 45-minute lesson in the morning. Then you go have lunch with your students or anyone. Like you're allowed to have lunches and dinners in the main restaurant with the guests, but you always have to be with a guest. Like you cannot go there just by yourself or with your friends. The thing is that people that come to Club Med know Club Med, and they know how it works. So at first, like when you go there, my first season was absolutely frightening. Like when I did the interview and they explained how the whole thing is going to work, I thought, oh my God, this sounds like Dirty Dancing. And yes, it was, at the end, it was pretty similar to what's happening in Dirty Dancing. But yeah, so when you go for the meals with a guest, you either make an appointment with your students, or you just enter the restaurants and then go from a table to a table and say, "Hi, my name is Kate. I'm a ski instructor from the Czech Republic. Would you mind if I join you for lunch?" And in the 99% of the times, the guest will be, oh my God, of course, have a seat. We've got a free seat here. And then you sit down and they start grilling you with questions like, where are you from? What do you do? How long have you been doing this? And you're just developing so much closer relationships with your students as well. And then obviously then you do your afternoon part of the lesson, which because it's free, not all the students come back for the afternoon part of the lesson. So usually you'd have a smaller group in the afternoon. And then again, you have to make appointments for dinner. And then in the evenings, you either have to go to the bar and drink with the guests at the bar, which again, for them, it's all inclusive. So they even have the drinks included in their package, and they can invite you for drinks as well. So you cannot come to the bar yourself and order a drink for yourself. You again have to be invited by the guests. But because they know how Club Med works, they automatically invite you for drinks, and then they try and get you as drunk as possible. And it's wild. And if you're not super into drinking, also what you can do is that every evening there's a show, there's a performance. And it's usually like a dance performance or a comedy, something that doesn't need much language, because obviously there's a lot of international guests that go there. There's a lot of Japanese. Basically, the whole January is the 90% of the hotel is full of Australians because it's their summer break. And then February, because of Chinese New Year, we get a lot of people from China or Taiwan, Singapore. And then March, it goes back to kind of like Japanese people and a lot of expats from Europe that live around Asia, like Hong Kong, Bangkok, Kuala Lumpur. And for them, obviously, it's much closer to travel from those destinations to Japan than going back to Europe for their ski holiday. So we get a lot of mixed clientele. So that was really interesting for me, because I felt like I'm kind of going back to my like performing arts background and doing all that and being on stage and stuff like that. So I actually really enjoyed it. My first season was super exhausting because it's full on. It's not just that you teach your lesson and then you're free and then you can do whatever you like, but you're spending like 12, 14 hours a day with your guests, and then going back to bed like after. I remember my first season, they were like this strict rule that they call all the staff that spend time with the guests outside of their primary job, which for me was instructing, they're called GOs. It comes from French, like gentle organiseur or something like that. I can't speak French, but and it basically means like an animator or friendly organizer, that we organize their free time as well. And in my first season, the rule was that as a GO, you cannot go to bed earlier than 11. And that's every day. So you would work 6 days a week, 1 day off, and you were not allowed to go to bed earlier than 11 every day. It was so exhausting, so exhausting. But it was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. I met so many amazing people all over Asia. And then I would always go, because after doing my first season in Japan, I was like, okay, what I'm going to do next? And I was like, oh, I always wanted to go back to New Zealand and do another season in New Zealand. I'll go back to New Zealand. But because the winter seasons usually last around 4 months, then you get like 6 to 8 weeks between the two seasons to go and do whatever you like. So I like always once a year, I'd go back to Czech Republic to visit my family and friends. And the other time of the year, I'd go and travel. I traveled around Japan. I went to Southeast Asia. I went to Taiwan. I went to Philippines. I went to South Africa. And everywhere I'd have friends. So I would go travel alone, but I would always visit friends and stay with friends, which was absolutely incredible.
Oh,
so that was like a big part of my life.
Would you ever want to do Club Med again, or would you want to kind of be like, is it too full on now, and you're just like, nah, I'm too old for this, I can't do it anymore?
So I actually ended up doing 6 seasons with Club Med. So I did my first one. And then after the first one, I was like, okay, that was really tough. But now I know what it's all about. So my second one will be much easier. So I did my second season, really, really enjoyed it. So I was like, this was actually really fun. I'm going to do a third season. And then after the third season, that's probably going to be enough, like 3, and that's enough. So I did my third season with Club Med, and then I got offered an assistant manager position for the next season. So I was like, okay, that's a challenge. I'll be up for it. So I went back on my 4th season, did another season with Club Med as an assistant manager. Actually really, really enjoyed it. I wasn't instructing as much, which was a bit of a difficult shift for me, because by the time I've done the 3 seasons with Club Med, I already developed quite a wide clientele. So people that were coming back to Club Med every season, and they would request me as their private instructor. So it was, but I made it as a condition, like going into the assistant manager position, that I still want to teach some of my private requests. And my boss at that time, he was from Slovenia. He was absolutely amazing. Cheers to Jure. And he said, yes, of course, Katie, like we'll always give you time to do your privates. So I did this season. I felt I've learned so much about myself, about instructing, about leading people. I felt like I did like a full circle going back to like studying arts management. I realized it's exactly the same thing. Like, it doesn't matter if you're organizing a group of actors or a group of ski instructors. They drink exactly the same amount. And then you have to work around that and make their schedules, like schedules for rehearsals or schedules for lessons, and that's similar. So I really, really enjoyed it. And then for the next season, Jure came and said, hey, Kate, they're actually building a second Club Med in Japan, just like half an hour from the place where our resort was. It's going to be a brand new, like, upscale resort. I'm going to go there and be the ski school manager. Do you want to come as my assistant? So for my 5th season, I changed resorts within Japan, but still working for Club Med. And I really enjoyed it because it was a change in a resort. It was something a little different, to go and ski and ride. I also got involved quite a bit with training the instructors. I was the most qualified snowboard instructor there, even though I did my qualifications so long ago, I was still the most qualified instructor there. So I would do a lot of the snowboard trainings there, and I just really, really enjoyed it. So then I went back for my 6th season, and that was like I think it's enough. Like 6 is enough. And it started really getting back to me, like how exhausting all the days are. And as a manager, you would spend a lot of the evenings and nights, late nights in the office trying to do the schedule for the next day. So it was just really, really tiring. And I thought 6 seasons was enough. And even before the whole COVID thing started, I was decided that that's going to be my last season in Japan.
Oh, that's so cool. I'm guessing it's going to be missed, but moving on to the next question before the final thoughts. Your future, what do you have any plans or goals in terms of where you want to go now and what you want to do in terms of instructing?
Yeah, so we missed a little part of the New Zealand, the second part of the year. So I'd always do my season in Club Med, and then after my first season in Club Med, I wanted to go back to New Zealand. So I contacted my supervisor from Sunshine Village, who did her summer seasons at the Remarkables in Queenstown. So I contacted her and said, "Hey, Erica, cheers to Erica.
Yes, Erica.
Would you vouch for me applying for the Remarkables?" And she said, "Oh my God, yes, Kate. You were absolutely amazing and like so flexible with changing from skis to snowboard and teaching like little ones or adults, like whatever. And we love your enthusiasm. So of course we'd love to have you at the Remarkables." So I got a job at the Remarkables and moved to Queenstown and started doing my seasons at the Remarkables. So the past 6 years, I would alternate doing Club Med in Japan and the Remarkables in New Zealand. And then, so last year when COVID started, I was in Japan, finished my season a little bit early because of the whole COVID thing, went back to Czech Republic, and I was hoping to go to New Zealand in May again. And then that never happened. And I was absolutely, absolutely heartbroken because I actually got pretty tired after 10 years on the road. After 10 years of traveling and instructing, I still love the job, but I got really tired of moving like every 6 months, packing my whole life and moving to the other side of the world. So I was like, okay, I'm done with Japan. I'm going to do my winter season in New Zealand and then try and stay there permanently. And then COVID came and locked me in the Czech Republic. So now, after a year being back from Japan, I'm still stuck in the Czech Republic. I also wasn't able to do a winter season this season because I did get a job here in one of the Czech ski resorts, but this Czech ski resorts never opened this winter. Never opened.
So hopefully then, hopefully next season, are you already in contact to go back to New Zealand?
So New Zealand said that they're going to have their borders closed until 2022. So they do not allow anyone else that they're residents to go to New Zealand. And you have to go through a state quarantine, and it's really, really, really difficult to go back. So there's no way for me to go back for this season, but fingers crossed, I really want to go back in 2022, and hopefully if I manage to stay there, I don't think I can be an instructor forever because I would also like to have a family at one point, but I definitely want to stay in touch with the industry. Like I would love doing HR or something within NZ Ski, which is the company that runs both the hills above Queenstown, the Remarkables, and Coronet Peak. So, or whatever. And I have so many friends in New Zealand. I've got people that are super close to me, nearly like family. So that's my goal.
Hopefully I'll meet you next season in Queenstown then. that'll be good.
That'll be good. That'll be really good. Where have you been to New Zealand already?
No,
Never.
The plan is to go next season. I want to go away and actually start teaching a season. The idea was to go to Queenstown and just sort of looking at the areas and seeing what's up. And being stuck with Basie for a while, I kind of was like, I kind of want to try the New Zealand system. That looks cool. Let's see how they work.
And it got bored of the Basie, but
yes.
Yeah. No, it's awesome, and they do have an amazing training system as well.
Yeah.
And you've got a lot of the trainers, the NZSIA or SBINZ trainers, working at the mountains. So they would do your trainings and they would do your prep courses and stuff like that. And New Zealand is just really cool by itself.
Doesn't need to say any. You don't need to say any words. You're just like, yes, it's New Zealand. It's it's an amazing place.
Yeah. Do you know if you would like to work at Coronet Peak or the Remarkables? Have you done your research yet?
Alec, have you done your
Coronet
research?
Peak. It'll be Coronet Peak, I'd say.
Why?
Why? Because I don't know. I just looked at it and I was like, bearing in mind, I've only just sort of gone into sort of just not full on into it, just sort of browsing because it's it's early works, and looking sort of how everything works. But I kind of was like, it was one of those two. But I was like, Coronet's Peaks, because on the site it just looks cool, and in my opinion, I don't know the mountains as much, so
We'll talk about after that podcast.
yeah.
Final thoughts, Katka. What do you think makes a great snowboard instructor then, in your opinion?
I call it PPE: passion, patience, and experience. So I think passion is the most important thing. In New Zealand, in the SBINZ, they actually have a part of their manual called Stoke.
Yes,
And
we've read the
actually-
manual.
Read the manual. Stoke level.
So good.
Yeah, and I think you've had someone on the podcast as well, like talking about Stoke. So that's the most important thing. And it doesn't matter how long you've been teaching, but if you have that passion, and if you can translate that passion onto your students, that for me is the most important thing. Then patience. Patience is absolutely incredible. Like if you're an impatient instructor, it's going to be really painful for your students. And experience for me is because I can see with myself how much over the years I've developed an eye for seeing what people are doing wrong and knowing how to fix it. So I find like passion, it doesn't matter if you're a first year instructor or if you've been instructing for 20 seasons. But the experience really comes with the seasons of instructing and observing people and learning and training yourself to be able to really see what the person is doing and see it immediately and knowing where it really comes from and knowing how to fix it.
Oh, it's great. You like nailed that question there, which is great. I love it. Before we kind of wrap up and finish off, is there anywhere people can find you, Katka, if that's the case, or anywhere you want to plug in terms of companies and industries and whatnot, if you have anywhere that you want to kind of really kind of pronounce?
Yeah, so I don't have any cool YouTube channels, or I'm actually not even on Instagram.
That's all good, don't worry.
So I am only on Facebook as Katka Kate Boukalová, or I have like my little Facebook page as Kate the Snow Instructor.
Yes.
Where I put like my instructing related stories.
I'm gonna follow that now.
Oh, well, I have to admit, I'm not very active on
It's
it.
all right. I'm still gonna follow it. It's all good.
Been, at least for the past few years, but you can see some pictures from Japan, from the Remarkables, like how New Zealand's absolutely stunning, or from some of the trainings I've done. And one more thing that I wanted to mention, if somebody would be more interested in the Czech instructing system. We do have our web pages, or at least a big part of our web pages is in English as well. So it's called APU. It translates for Czech Association of Ski Instructors. So www.apul.cz and then /en if you want the pages in English.
Max is typing it in, so then I can make sure you copy and paste
I'm
it
just
into notes.
interested in general anyway, because it sounds sick.
Yeah. I think the web pages are really, really cool. They explain the Czech system exactly. You can see like tables, how the levels work, and also what we haven't talked about, and I'm not sure if we have time for that, but there's a really interesting and different scoring system for your exam.
Okay, you know what? Let's
do a quick one
Yeah,
into
let's-
that. Might
let's
as well,
quick run that.
because that's interesting, as usual.
Sorry for keeping this podcast really long.
The longer the
but-
better. That's
Yeah,
absolutely
definitely
fine.
the longer the better.
So how the Czech system works is when you get scored on your exams, you've got different modules, and you get points for the modules, and then it gets all like put together into one grade, and you get points from 0 to 10. And then to pass your level D, so our level 1, you have to get 1 point. To pass your level C, our level 2, you have to get 2 points. To pass your level B, our level 3, you have to get 4 points. To pass your level A, you have to get 6 points. And then, so when you get scored, it actually tells you how far away you're from your next qualification. So, for example, if I'm if I'm doing my level C course, and then my final result is 5.5 points, I know that I'm super close to my level 3. If I'm doing my level C course and I get so it's 4 points for B. So then if I get 3.5, I know I'm really, really high up. If I get 2.1, I know that I probably have a really long way to get to my level 3. And then once you get your 6 points, so you pass your level A, then if you get 7 points, if you get 6 points, you get your level A, and you're also entitled to teach the D courses. If you get 7 points, you're entitled to teach C courses. If you get A points, you are entitled to teach the B courses. And then obviously 10 points is what the best instructor or best trainer of our association gets.
Makes sense.
Yeah. That's really cool. Awesome. Anything else you want to say before we head off, Kat? Are you feeling all good?
I'm feeling all good. There's a couple of crazy stories that I could tell that we're probably leaving this on.
That's all good. Yeah, definitely season 2 though, for sure.